In some millturn machines, standard polar codes like G12.1 or others do not work. In such cases, you can create your own polar mode in parametric form. Let's look at this DMG Mori millturn post processor with FANUC control. Here in this post processor, there are two operations with polar cutting mode, both defined under 3-axis operation. First one is op-polar, and is used for 3-axis polar milling operations. Second one is op-drilling, and is used for 3-axis polar drilling operations. Let's look at their format cutting mode, polar on and off commands. Here in the polar milling operation, polar code G12.1 is used to activate standard polar mode, and G13.1 is used to deactivate it. However, these codes are not used in the polar drilling operation. As you can see, format cutting mode, polar on is empty, and also format cutting mode, polar off. This is because polar drilling operation uses the special parametric polar mode of MANUSpost developer. It doesn't use G12.1 and G13.1 codes. This is not the only difference between standard and parametric polar modes. Let's now look at the other differences. First, a new polar cutting mode is added here in polar drilling operation. Here, to activate parametric polar mode, you should select Don't Transform Coordinates parameter as false. In the standard polar mode with G12.1, this parameter is selected as true. Secondly, in parametric polar mode, radius axis should be selected as 100, which shows x-axis in vector form. In parametric polar mode, which is activated for millturn CNCs, the x-axis must be selected as the master axis, so that new x values are calculated by MANUSpost developer, where the y-axis is always 0. However, in standard polar mode, this parameter is not used, so it is not important how you define the radius axis. In addition to these adjustments, new format linear and rapid motion commands are added in the polar drilling operation, which uses parametric polar mode. What we define here is actually same with the commands defined in the standard milling operation. Here, you can see x, y, z and rotary axis 1 coordinates. Let's now look at the polar milling operation with G12.1. Here, as you can see, coordinate rotary axis 1 is removed in all linear motion commands. In the standard polar mode with G12.1, coordinate rotary axis 1 word should not be used. This is because original y-axis values are written in the NC program, like c-axis values. Let's look at coordinate y word in standard polar mode. As you can see, the format of the word, coordinate y, has been changed. While printing the y-axis value, we use the letter C instead of y. Let's now look at the coordinate y word, defined in the parametric polar mode. The format of the y-axis does not change. We still use the letter y as we always do. Lastly, you should check your interpolation settings. Linear interpolation adjustment is done inside action linear motion, which is defined in event linear rapid motion. If you don't have this event and action in your operation, you should add them on your own. In the standard polar mode with G12.1, the linear interpolation is selected as false. Linear interpolation is used to divide the linear motions into small intermediate points. Here, it is selected as false because in G12.1 mode, there is no need to interpolate linear motions. It is done automatically by the NC controller. Let's now look at the parametric polar mode. In the parametric polar mode, where G12.1 is not used, NC controller doesn't automatically interpolate linear motion lines. However, here, this parameter is again selected as false. This is because linear interpolation does not need to be activated for drilling operations. If you use parametric polar mode in milling operations, then it is important to activate linear interpolation here by selecting this parameter as true. Moreover, if you use parametric polar mode in milling operations, you should also convert circular moves to linear moves. In this case, you should first add event circular motion to your operation, if it is not already added. Then, in action circular motion, you should select these two parameters as true.